January 2026, the streets of Minnesota became the focal point of a growing national crisis. What began as opposition to federal immigration enforcement rapidly evolved into a confrontation that tested the limits of presidential power and civil resistance in the United States. Federal immigration authorities had intensified operations across Minneapolis and surrounding areas, deploying large numbers of ICE and Homeland Security officers. Residents reported aggressive enforcement tactics, frequent raids, and a heightened sense of fear within immigrant communities. Tensions escalated sharply after an ICE officer fatally shot a local woman during an enforcement encounter. The incident sent shockwaves through the state, igniting mass protests that drew thousands into the streets. Demonstrators demanded accountability, justice, and an immediate end to what they described as militarized immigration enforcement. While many protests remained peaceful, clashes between protesters and federal agents became increasingly common. Another shooting, involving an ICE officer firing on a man during an attempted arrest, further inflamed public anger and deepened mistrust between the community and federal authorities. As unrest continued, President Donald Trump issued a stark warning. He declared that if Minnesota officials failed to control what he described as violent attacks against federal officers, he would invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807. The statement signaled a dramatic escalation, raising the possibility of deploying active-duty U.S. military forces on American streets to suppress domestic unrest. The threat reverberated nationwide. Political leaders, civil rights advocates, and constitutional scholars expressed alarm, warning that invoking the Insurrection Act against civilian protesters could erode democratic norms and civil liberties. Minnesota's governor and local officials urged calm, emphasizing that state and local law enforcement were capable of maintaining order without military intervention. Supporters of the president, however, argued that the federal government had a duty to protect its officers and restore order, framing the protests as lawless and dangerous. The divide reflected broader national tensions over immigration policy, federal authority, and the limits of protest in a polarized America. The Insurrection Act itself is one of the most powerful and controversial tools available to a U.S. president. Enacted more than 2 centuries ago, it has been used sparingly, typically during extreme national emergencies when state authorities were unable or unwilling to enforce federal law. Critics questioned whether the situation in Minnesota met that threshold, warning that its use could set a precedent for military involvement in civil dissent. As winter settled over Minnesota, the protests continued and the nation watched closely. The standoff became more than a local dispute. It became a defining moment in the ongoing